I've been alive long enough to know that some betrayals don't arrive loudly, the way movies make them seem. They come as a soft shift in a loved one's voice. A brief flicker in their eyes that you dismiss because you want to believe you're imagining it. They arrive slowly, almost politely, like frost spreading across a windowpane. By the time you realize the cold has reached your bones, it's already too late. My name is Mara. I'm 79 years old, with hands that tremble more from memory than from age, and a heart that has been cracked open more times than any doctor could count. I speak softly now, out of weakness, but because I've learned the power of quiet truth. Loud people are almost always hiding something. Quiet ones have usually lived enough to accept what they can't change. And tonight, I'm telling you a story I never thought I'd speak aloud. It begins in the small yellow house where I raised my son. A house that smelled like cedar polish and hope for almost 4 decades. A house that held every birthday candle he ever blew out. Every fevered night I stayed awake at his bedside. Every dream I carried on my shoulders while he learned how to walk on his own. I didn't know that someday he would rip that house from my hands with a smile so gentle it took me years to understand how sharp it really was. Back then, he was simply my Daniel, a boy who brought me dandelions from the yard and stuck them in my apron pocket, as if they were roses. A boy who ran barefoot across the living room floor, his laughter echoing off the walls like music I never thought would end. I don't know how mothers do it, how we hold entire lifetimes in our chests, knowing one day our children will take those memories and build their own worlds without us. Maybe love makes us fools. Or maybe love is the only reason any of us survived this life at all. Daniel grew into a man faster than I was prepared for. One day he was hugging my waist, and the next he was towering over me, his voice deeper, his eyes harder to read. He loved me. Know that now, in the complicated way adults love the ones who raised them. But somewhere along the path between childhood and ambition, something else began to pull him away. A hunger, a restlessness, a need to be more, have more, show more. An simple grandmother with soft sweaters and warm casseroles didn't fit in the picture of the life he imagined. Still, I trusted him. I trusted him the way old trees trust the sky, even when the storms have taken too many branches. I trusted him because he was the one person in this world I believed would never treat me as anything less than sacred. But life has a way of showing you that no human being is immune to weakness, not even your own child. The signs were small at first. He started calling me Ma instead of Mama. A clipped syllable that felt like turning down the volume on a song I wasn't ready to stop hearing. He came less often, missed dinners, forgot holidays, blamed long work hours. I forgave every absence. That's what mothers do. We fold ourselves into excuses for the ones we love, even when those excuses start shredding our hearts to ribbons. Then one ordinary Sunday afternoon, he sat across from me at my kitchen table, our table, and asked me a question that tightened the air like a noose. Ma, have you thought about the future? I mean, your future. I smiled then, foolishly, warmly. I thought he meant something tender, something protective. I didn't hear the rehearsed edge in his voice, didn't see the way his eyes darted toward the envelope in his hand. What future? I joked. I'm old. The future's behind me. He didn't laugh. I just mean, he cleared his throat. This house is a lot for you to manage. I worry about you living alone. I didn't think anything of it. He was right. My knees had grown stubborn on the stairs, and my breathing wasn't what it used to be. But that house held every piece of me. I'm fine, sweetheart, I said, touching his arm. I've lived here nearly 40 years. I know the creaks in the floorboards better than I know my own spine. He forced a smile. Daniel always forced smiles when he wanted something. I know, Ma, I know. I want you somewhere you don't have to worry. Somewhere safe. You've given enough. Let me give you something back. I remember the warmth that spread through me then, the foolish pride of a mother who believes her child is trying to protect her. I didn't know that protection and control sometimes were the same face. You always took care of me, I told him, but I'm not ready to leave my home, not yet. He nodded, said he understood, kissed my forehead, told me he loved me, and then, as he walked out the door, he slipped that envelope back into his coat pocket with emotion so small I barely noticed. Looking back, I think betrayal always begins with paper, a contract, a signature, a tiny decision that seems harmless until you realize it was the turning of a key you didn't know you owned. Months passed. My knees grew worse. My breathing tightened. I slowed down. And as I slowed, Daniel sped up. More visits. More gentle questions. More concern that felt like hands nudging my back toward a cliff I didn't see yet. One evening, as the sun dipped behind the oak tree in the yard, He brought papers. He set them on my kitchen table, the same table where I had once put birthday cakes and warm biscuits and his little elbows when he did homework. "It's just to help me handle things if anything happens," he said. "Nothing more. I need to make sure your bills are paid, that the house stays in order. You trust me, don't you?" Trust. The one currency old people cling to because we don't have much else left. I signed. Without reading, without questioning. I signed because he was my son. And when a mother signs her name for her child, she never imagines that ink can be used as a weapon. 2 months later, he was standing in my doorway with 2 strangers behind him. Movers, their hands already reaching for my framed photographs. "My coat, my life, Ma," he said softly. "Don't make this harder than it has to be." I looked at him then, not as the boy I raised, but as the man he had become. His gaze was steady, calm, almost rehearsed. The movers didn't wait for my permission. They were already wrapping the lamp I bought with my first nursing paycheck, boxing up the quilt I stitched by hand when Daniel was born. "What are you doing?" I whispered. "At my age, anger doesn't shout. It cracks." He sighed, as if I were the one being unreasonable. "It's time, Ma. You can't stay here alone. You'll be happier with nurses and people your age. I found a place. A nice one. A place." My voice felt foreign in my own throat. "Daniel, this is my home." He didn't look at me when he said it. Not anymore. My knees almost buckled, but pride kept me upright. That and the last flicker of defiance still burning in my chest. I felt the whole world tilt beneath me as the truth finally surfaced. The papers I signed. The concern. The gentle questions. He had planned it all. "Why?" I asked. One word. Heavy as stone. His jaw tightened. "I can't take care of you forever. And this house. It's better used than sitting full of memories you don't need anymore." Full of memories. Yes. Memories of him. Of us. Of a life I thought we shared. Perhaps that was the problem. He had already filed the paperwork, transferring my home into his name under the guise of managing my affairs. Legally, I wasn't its owner anymore. Emotionally, I would always be. He gave me 30 minutes. 30 minutes to say goodbye to 40 years. I left with one suitcase and a heart so heavy, it could have sunk the earth itself. The nursing home smelled of lemon disinfectant and wilted carnations. The hallways were lined with people waiting for something. Time. Visitors. Breath. I thought I was one of them now. A woman quietly finishing her story in a room that didn't belong to her. But life's beautiful life has a way of surprising you even when you believe all your surprises are behind you. On my 3rd night there, while I was watching moths dance around the courtyard light outside my window, a young woman appeared at my door. A nurse, though she didn't move like one. She moved like someone who still carried gentleness in her hands. "Mrs. Haddon," she asked. "Can I sit?" I nodded. She sat at the edge of my bed, her eyes kind, her voice soft. "My name is Liana. I saw your son leave earlier." He didn't look back. I felt something tighten in my chest, a thread snapping quietly. "No," I said. "He didn't." She studied me for a moment. Then, very gently, she said, "You don't belong here." A laugh slipped out of me, brittle as old glass. "Apparently I do." "Not like this," she whispered. "Not without your consent." Something in her tone made me inhale sharply, and for the first time in days, I felt the faint pulse of something I had forgotten existed. Hope. Liana helped me go through the papers I'd signed, helped me understand the laws I didn't know existed, helped me see that what Daniel had done wasn't just unkind, it was illegal. Elder Corres. She called it exploitation, fraud, words that tasted bitter in my mouth, because they came from the hand of someone I loved more than my own life. She introduced me to her aunt, a retired attorney who had spent her career protecting people exactly like me, a woman with sharp eyes and a spine made of moral steel. Her name was Elora, and she treated my story like it mattered, like I mattered. For weeks, we built a case quietly, carefully, while I drank the bitter tea of betrayal every morning like medicine I didn't want but needed. And slowly, the truth rose like a tide too powerful to ignore. My son hadn't just taken my house, he had erased the life I built inside it, but I was not done yet, and neither was the fight. Asterisk. Elora moved with a quiet certainty, the kind born from years of defending people whose voices had been ignored. She reminded me of the women from my childhood church, the ones who didn't sing loudly but hummed so deeply it felt like their voices came from the earth itself. She didn't pity me. She simply saw me, in a way I hadn't been seen in a long time. For weeks, she visited the nursing home, usually in the late afternoon when the halls began to dim and the world felt softer. She'd sit beside my window, sorting through documents with an efficiency that made me think she carried truth in her bones. Liana, the young nurse, would sometimes peek in, offering warm tea or a reassuring smile that brushed over the sharp edges of my days. During those meetings, I learned things that made my pulse thrum in disbelief, laws I never knew were written, rights I didn't know I still had, and each new truth was like a small beam of light piercing through a room I thought would stay dark forever. He filed this under the pretense of medical necessity, Elora said one morning, tapping the stack of papers with a manicured finger. He claimed you were mentally unfit to manage your affairs. I stared at her, stunned. Mentally unfit? He knows that isn't true. He knows I'm still sharp. She gave me a long look, her eyes softening. People who want power over others rarely care about the truth, Mara. They care about what they can get away with. Her words sat heavy in the air. They tasted bitter, but there was honesty in them, honesty I had avoided, because love is blind until it hurts too much to stay that way. Do you want to fight this? She asked quietly. The question lingered between us, a small, trembling thing. I thought of my son's face that day in my doorway, the way he'd looked through me instead of at me. I thought of the movers packing my memories as if they were clutter. I thought of the house, my house, the one I scrubbed clean with my own hands every spring, the one where Daniel had taken his first steps, spoken his first words, dreamed his first dreams. The house still held my heartbeat. Yes, I whispered, I want to fight. Elora nodded, as if she'd known my answer before I did. Then we begin. The next month unfolded like a quiet storm building its strength. Elora filed motions. She collected evidence. She spoke in a language of legal terms I struggled to understand. But I trusted her the way a drowning woman trusts the hand pulling her to shore. Liana helped me gather every piece of my medical history. She printed documents, contacted doctors, even recorded statements from staff who had seen how capable I still was. At night, when the nursing home halls fell silent and the lights dimmed to a soft amber glow, she'd sit by my bedside and tell me stories from her own life. She talked about her mother in Jamaica, her little brother who wanted to be a pilot, her dream of opening a small clinic someday. Her presence steadied me. She felt like the daughter I never had, or maybe the daughter life finally gave me when I least expected it. Through those long days, I found strength in small things. The way sunlight filtered through my curtains in thin, golden threads. The soft hum of the oxygen machines down the hall. The rustle of pages as Elora flipped through her notes. And I held on to those things the way you hold on to breath, gently, gratefully. But every step forward came with a shadow. My son still visited, though less and less. His visits were short, perfunctory, filled with polite smiles that never reached his eyes. He'd sit in the chair across from me, his posture stiff, his fingers tapping his knee as if he couldn't wait to leave. How are they treating you here? He'd ask, his tone bland, uninterested. They're kind, I'd reply. That's good. A pause. I'm doing my best, you know, trying to make the right decisions. For both of us. For both of us. A lie dressed in concern. I watched him during those visits, searching his face for the boy. I once knew, the boy who used to rest his head on my lap whenever thunder frightened him, but the boy was gone, replaced by a man whose ambition had carved out pieces of him until only sharp edges remained. Sometimes I wondered if he regretted what he'd done, but regret requires a conscience willing to listen, and Daniel's conscience had gone quiet long before he took my house. Still, every betrayal aches, even when you pretend it doesn't. I remember the morning Elora arrived with her briefcase heavier than usual, her steps brisk with purpose. She sat across from me in the recreation room, a space filled with puzzles, books, and the soft murmur of residents in wheelchairs. It's time, she said. Time for what? I asked. For you to come home. My heart stuttered. But the case, we have enough, she said gently. More than enough, and the judge granted a hearing. We'll go next week. But until then, you're leaving this place. I blinked at her, stunned. How, Daniel? Daniel has no legal right to keep you here, and certainly not after what we've uncovered. She leaned forward. You can't heal in a place you never chose. Her words washed over me like warm water, easing knots I didn't know I'd been carrying. Where will I go? I whispered. Elora smiled. With me. Liana beamed beside her, as if she were offering me a gift. We already packed your things. And just like that, I was free. Leaving the nursing home felt surreal. The automatic doors slid open, letting in a breeze that smelled like fresh rain and distant asphalt. I stepped outside slowly, unsure of how the world could still spin normally after the months I'd spent confined to a facility that felt like a waiting room for the forgotten. Elora opened the passenger door of her old sedan. "Take your time," she said softly. "The world will wait." I sat down carefully, adjusting myself against the seat. As she pulled out of the parking lot, I watched the nursing home shrink in the rearview mirror. Place I had entered unwillingly and was leaving stronger than I'd ever expected. We arrived at her house, a modest, tidy home with rose bushes lining the fence. The walls inside smelled faintly of lemon cleaner and old books. She showed me to a guest room painted in warm beige with soft blankets folded neatly at the foot of the bed. "You're safe here," she said, squeezing my hand once before leaving me alone to settle in. Safe. A word I hadn't felt in a long time. That night, I lay awake staring at the ceiling, listening to the distant hum of traffic outside. My heart felt bruised but also strangely hopeful, like soil softened by rain, ready to grow something again. The days leading up to the hearing moved slowly but purposefully. Elora reviewed documents with me every evening, explaining each step with patience. She warned me that Daniel would fight back, that he'd deny wrongdoing, that he'd twist his actions into acts of love. People like him, she said, they build their lives on illusions. When those illusions crumble, they panic. I knew she was right. I'd seen that panic in his eyes the last time he visited me, a flicker of desperation masked by false confidence. On the morning of the hearing, Elora helped me dress in a soft blue suit. The fabric felt heavy with significance. I looked at myself in her small hallway mirror and hardly recognized the woman staring back. Yes, but steady, poised, no longer bowed by guilt or grief. Liana drove us to the courthouse in her little hatchback. The morning light was bright, sharp, almost too honest. My hands trembled in my lap, not from fear, but from the realization that this moment would define everything that came after. Inside the courthouse, the air was cool and sterile. The walls echoed softly with footsteps and muted conversations. Elora guided me into the small courtroom, helping me sit at a table near the front. She placed a reassuring hand on my shoulder. "You're stronger than you think," she murmured. Then Daniel walked in. It had been weeks since I'd seen him, but instead of guilt, instead of remorse, what struck me most was how tired he looked. His suit was perfectly pressed, his hair neatly combed, but his eyes, those brown eyes that once sparkled whenever he brought home a good grade, looked strained. He didn't look at me, not once. The judge entered, a woman with gray streaks in her hair and a gaze that held both firmness and compassion. She listened carefully as Elora presented the case, the forged medical claims, the falsified forms, the coercion, the undue pressure, the deceit. At each revelation, I felt my chest tighten, not because of the betrayal I had already lived through, that pain, but because each truth spoken aloud stripped away the last illusions I had left about my son. When Daniel took the stand, he spoke eloquently, almost convincingly. He said he acted out of concern, that he feared for my safety, that he believed I was incapable of living alone. His voice trembled. It almost fooled me. Almost, because beneath the practiced charm, I saw the shadow of fear in his expression, the awareness that the truth he'd tried to bury was surfacing. And for the first time, I didn't pity him. I didn't hate him either. I simply saw him clearly, a man who had made choices he could no longer outrun. When it was my turn to speak, I stood slowly, steadying myself with the edge of the table. My voice was soft, so soft, the room leaned in to hear me. "I raised my son with everything I had," I began. "I gave him my time, my love, my home. I taught him to be kind. I never imagined he would use that home, that love, against me." My eyes watered, but I didn't let the tears fall. "I don't want revenge," I said. "I don't want to punish him. I just want the life I built back. I want my dignity back. And I want him to face what he did without pretending it was love." Silence settled over the courtroom like dust in sunlight. The judge nodded once. Then she spoke in a voice that carried the weight of truth. At each revelation, I felt my chest tighten, not because of the betrayal I had already lived through, that pain, but because each truth spoken aloud stripped away the last illusions I had left about my son. When Daniel took the stand, he spoke eloquently, almost convincingly. He said he acted out of concern, that he feared for my safety, that he believed I was incapable of living alone. His voice trembled. It almost fooled me, almost, because beneath the practiced charm, I saw the shadow of fear in his expression, the awareness that the truth he'd tried to bury was surfacing. And for the first time, I didn't pity him, I didn't hate him either. I simply saw him clearly, a man who had made choices he could no longer outrun. When it was my turn to speak, I stood slowly, steadying myself with the edge of the table. My voice was soft, so soft the room leaned in to hear me. "I raised my son with everything I had," I began. I gave him my time, my love, my home. I taught him to be kind. I never imagined he would use that home, that love, against me. My eyes watered, but I didn't let the tears fall. I don't want revenge, I said. I don't want to punish him. I just want the life I built back. I want my dignity back, and I want him to face what he did without pretending it was love. Silence settled over the courtroom like dust in sunlight. The judge nodded once. Then she spoke in a voice that carried the weight of truth. This court finds that the property transfer was obtained through coercion and is therefore nullified. Full ownership is restored to Mrs. Mara Haddon. The son is ordered to remove himself from the premises within 10 days and is restricted from managing or accessing her financial or medical information effective immediately. My breath hitched not in shock, but in release. It was done. The gavel struck, and something inside me, something small, fragile, long bruised, finally breathed again. The 10 days given to Daniel to leave the house passed without a word from him. I didn't expect any. He had always drifted away when accountability brushed too close to his skin. I returned to my home slowly, cautiously, like an old woman stepping back into a memory. The front door creaked exactly the way it always had. The floorboards sighed beneath my weight. The air smelled faintly of dust, and something else, emptiness, perhaps, but it was mine. I walked through each room, touching the walls as if reacquainting myself with an old friend. The house was a little colder, a little dimmer, but it was standing, and so was I. I didn't move in immediately. Some wounds need space before they can heal where they were made. Instead, I packed up a few things and continued living with Elora for a while longer, giving the house time to settle without him, and giving my heart time to settle without the fantasy I had clung to for too long. One evening, as the sun painted the sky in strokes of gold and rose, Liana joined me on Elora's porch. We sat in rocking chairs, wrapped in knitted blankets, watching birds search for a place to land. "What will you do now?" she asked gently. I took a deep, slow breath. "I don't know," I said, "but whatever comes, it will be mine. Chosen, not forced." She smiled softly. "You deserve that." And for the first time in years, I believed it, but life, ever unpredictable, wasn't finished with me yet. As autumn turned the leaves outside into brittle embers, as frost began to creep along the edges of the grass, I received a letter. Not from Daniel. From someone else. A woman I'd never met. The letter was 2 pages long, written in loops and curls of elegant penmanship. She introduced herself gently, carefully. She said she knew Daniel, said she needed to speak with me, said there were things she believed I deserved to know. I felt something stir, a mixture of dread and curiosity. She lived in a small apartment not too far from my home. And she had a child with Daniel's eyes. I stood outside her apartment door for a long moment before knocking. My hands were steadier than I expected. Age had taken many things from me, but not my resolve, not anymore. The woman who opened the door was young, early 30s maybe, with tired eyes that carried the kind of stories one doesn't share easily. She introduced herself as Camille, and when a little girl peeked from behind her skirt, clutching a worn stuffed rabbit, my breath caught in my throat. Those eyes, Daniel's eyes, but softer, kinder. "She's my daughter," Camille said quietly. "Your granddaughter." The word washed over me like warm rain after a long, unforgiving winter. For a moment, I felt dizzy, not with grief, not with anger, but with the sheer strangeness of life's timing. "I didn't come to ask for anything," Camille continued. "I just thought you should know she exists, and that she asks about her grandparents sometimes." I looked at the child, small, unsure, her braids slightly crooked. Nothing about her carried Daniel's arrogance. She was an innocent carved from the very heart of chance. "What's your name?" I asked softly. "Maribel," she whispered. My name broke in my throat. "Hello, sweetheart." She stepped closer, curious rather than afraid. "Children always sense who wishes them well." Camille's voice trembled. "He doesn't help. He barely visits. I thought maybe you should know the truth about the man who hurt you." "I'm sorry, but I surprised myself." I wasn't angry. Maybe age softens the places inside us that once felt carved from stone. Maybe time teaches us mercy not out of weakness but out of understanding. "Would you like some tea?" I asked them both. "I make it strong and sweet, the way my mother did." Camille blinked. You want us to come in?" I nodded. The sins of one man do not erase the worth of those around him. Inside Elora's warm little house, Maribel curled on the rug with a book Liana had left behind. Camille and I talked quietly over steaming mugs. She told me of her struggles, her fears. The loneliness of raising a child without a partner who understands responsibility. I listened to not because I wanted to save her, but because listening is sometimes the first act of love. Before they left, Maribel slipped her small hand into mine and said, "Do you want to be my grandma?" Something inside me, something old and bruised but still alive, opened like a window letting in spring air. "Yes," I whispered, "I would like that very much." I didn't hear from Daniel for months. Not a call, not a letter, just silence and echo of all the years he spent drifting away even while living under my roof. Then one evening, as the sky bruised itself into twilight, there was a knock at Alora's porch door. I opened it to find my son standing there, shoulders slumped, eyes hollow. "Mom," he said softly, I lost everything." The words hung there like damp laundry, heavy, shapeless, sagging under their own truth. I studied him, this grown man, this wounded boy, this stranger I once rocked to sleep. "I know," I replied gently. He swallowed. "Do you hate me?" I thought about hatred, about how it ferments in the bones, makes you stiff, brittle, breaks you long before it breaks anyone else. "No," I said, "but I no longer carry the pieces you broke." His face twisted in shame, more, maybe confusion. "Can I come in?" I shook my head slowly. "Not tonight, Daniel. Healing is a house you must enter through your own door." He stared at me, waiting for anger, or forgiveness, or rescue. But I was done being the place he landed when the world refused him comfort. "You have a daughter," I whispered instead. He flinched, as if struck. "Camille told you." "She didn't tell me," I said. "She trusted me. There's a difference." He lowered his gaze, and for a brief, flickering moment, I saw the boy he had been, the boy I loved with all I had, long before life carved him into someone unrecognizable. "Will you see me again?" he asked. "Perhaps," I said softly, "when you come to me as a man, not a child demanding more than he gives." He nodded, tears gathering but refusing to fall, and walked into the fading light, one silhouette among many. I watched him go without bitterness, just a quiet kind of acceptance. These days, my life is smaller, but fuller. I moved back into my home eventually, not because I needed the space, but because I wanted to choose my ending. I planted new flowers where Daniel once saw only maintenance issues. I filled the rooms with easy laughter, Liana's, Elora's, and occasionally Maribel's little giggles echoing down the hall. I'm not raising a child. I'm simply loving one. There's a difference, and it's gentler. I see Camille often. We share food, stories, and the unspoken bond between women who survived someone else's version of them. And sometimes, when the wind shifts just right, when sunlight glitters on my window in that peculiar, forgiving way, I think of Daniel. I wonder if he'll ever step through his own door of healing. I hope he does. Not for my sake, but for his daughter's. But I no longer wait. Waiting is a weight, and I've carried too many of those already. I am 78 now. The world moves slower. My knees creak like old floorboards. My breath sometimes comes with a soft catch that reminds me I am closer to the horizon than the sunrise. But I am not alone. I am not the prophecy he cast like a curse over my life. I am a woman who lost almost everything and still found a way to open her hands again. My revenge was never loud, never cruel. It was simply this: I lived, I healed, I loved again, quietly, fiercely, on my terms. And when the world finally asks where I went, let them say, she walked through fire and came out carrying light.